Lived in a suburban zoo, battling pet chaos and CPS fears, until my wife's hoarding destroyed our marriage and shattered our family life. It's 6 a.m. and the roosters have been crowing non-stop for the last 2 hours in our sunroom adjacent to our bedroom. I'm now sitting in the basement as flies swarm around me and I've given up swatting them because there's too many to bother. The basement is the area of the house with the least amount of flies. On top of the rooster noise is the cackle of male quail that reside in our living room. They live in the base of 3 cages that are filled with budgies and cockatiel. When I wake up I remember to put on my slippers and I hope I get to them before stepping in dog urine or fresh dog shit. Our carpet in our master bedroom is saturated in dog urine with many spots that haven't dried out yet. Yesterday, my wife bought our daughter a new tortoise and a frog. The tortoise will be added to the aquarium with our bearded dragon. The bearded dragon, which is free to roam the house because my wife feels it will be happier. It is free to poop on our furniture or floor or where it was left out last. As I sit here in my basement, the one place where I do not allow any pets, I'm listening to a rabbit thumping its paws on the floor above me, or it's the sound of it biting and ripping apart our wall or furniture. I'm not sure which noise it is, but I don't care anymore. We have at least 6 rabbits. Their little claws make a loud scraping and tapping noise as they scurry and hop across our laminate floors. The main level of our home is littered in rabbit droppings. The droppings get pushed to the side as our 4 children and us inadvertently kick them around while walking through the main level of our home. The dogs won't likely get let out this morning to go to the bathroom. The smaller dog doesn't even obey the command to go out anymore. He just stares at you confused by your directive. If he does go outside, he just comes back in to find a place to shit and pee in one of our bedrooms. Our backyard doesn't have much dog shit because it's mostly in our bedrooms. It will stay there for days on end because there is no expectation that it shouldn't be there. The new smell from the giant rug I bought for the basement has worn off. It smelled like glue and dye and it drowned out the odors from the dozen chicken that reside in our family and living room. They live in a couple 36-inch fabric pop-up enclosures filled with pine shavings. It is saturated with chicken shit and urine and has soaked into our oak hardwood floors, permanently damaging them. The stench is eye-watering. We have a lot of feathered friends here. In our master bedroom are 3 more cages with a variety of exotic birds that sing loudly all day long and leave a permanent mess of seeds on the floor around the cages. They are free to roam, and so our room has dropping along our bed's headboard, on our pillows, along the sides of the doors where they perch, in our bathroom mirrors and down our shower curtains. Our sunroom has 30+ chickens and about 8 or 10 of them are roosters, and the roosters crow all day. This is where the flies breed. They come in through the 40-year-old sliding door that is often left open. This door separates the sunroom from our living area and our kitchen. The flies swarm in, and at any given time there are dozens of flies in our living space. The heat and humidity bake the sunroom floor, which is covered in chicken shit and urine, and the odor spreads through the house. Our house is in a suburban neighborhood. We do not live on a farm. In addition to these animals, we have 2 pet rats. They are sweet, but as you would expect, their cage is not well maintained and it stinks 90% of the time. Our boys' room has a snake and axolotl aquarium. One of our daughters has an algae-covered fish aquarium that we fill with water whenever we hear the filter screech because the water evaporated too low. She also has an unkept cage with a hamster that is rarely played with. Right now I'm listening to the mice eat through the foam board insulation in my basement. I want to get rid of them, but it's challenging with all the access to feed throughout the house. They seem to be breeding and entering through the home at a faster pace than they can be exterminated. I am not a pet person and this life is driving me nuts. My wife is a pet hoarder and has ADHD. Our backyard is a ghost town of quail cages from last year when she was really into quail breeding, and we had over 150 living in our backyard. Now there remains broken and half-built cages and mounds of shavings and wood chips that she intended to use as bedding. Scattered in random places in our backyard are household garbage bags of chicken shit. When you try to lift them they fall apart because they weigh 30 to 40 pounds and the bags have deteriorated from the sun. When challenged, she seems to delight in the frustration it causes me because she is not happy in our marriage. It seems that accumulating animals is bringing her little bits of dopamine with each acquisition. I'm tired of living like this and I don't know what to do. Our children think this behavior is acceptable and they often chide at me for not being on board with the animals. They say I'm not a pet person. It's true that I'm actually not a pet person. But what we having going on here is irresponsible, unsanitary and illegal. This is pet cruelty and normalizing neglect of animals. Edit, people think this is a shit post but it's real. I'm not uploading pics for privacy, but it's genuine. I wrote it in this style just to express everything because it's distressing and aggravating and I haven't expressed it to anyone. I'm seriously asking for advice. It slipped out of control. The amount of pushback from my wife when I address the problems creates a lot of tension and distresses the children. She just keeps bringing home animals. The last time I threatened to rehome the chickens that she was keeping in the house, she became extremely angry and combative. She rehomed them, but not after a slew of insults and claiming I was being totally unreasonable. Then she just slips back into the same behaviors because she never believed it was a problem in the first place. We've had company come to our house but no one has called CPS or animal control yet. Seeing all these reactions has me realizing just how bad it is from an outside perspective, and a CPS call is a serious possibility and that is terrifying. And edit. Some of you may remember my post venting and looking for advice on what to do in regards to an extreme animal hoarding situation with my wife. Dozens of chickens residing in the home and a variety of animals roaming outside of cages in the home, feces and a rampant mice infestation. After posting, I sought therapy and started getting my bearings straightened out. In the midst of setting firm boundaries and beginning the work to clean up literally 2 tons of chicken shit, sand and pine shavings and resolving the rodent problem, a call to CPS was made by a third party and an investigation ensued. Believe it or not, by that time, much of the situation was resolved, animals rehomed, home cleaned and sanitized. Nothing came of the CPS investigation and it was pretty quickly closed out. However, the relationship was essentially permanently damaged as my wife continued to deny the problem was out of hand. Deep resentment developed towards each other. Fast forward nearly 12 months and my wife requested a divorce. We are now separated, awaiting an official legal divorce. I have moved into a very nice home and have the kids 50-50. My physical and mental health has dramatically improved. My kids now have an organized and clean haven. They seem happy. It seems inevitable she may lose custody of the kids at some point altogether. I'm hoping she can keep things in check, but due to the constant denial that there was a problem, it will most likely repeat. I may have no choice but take steps to ensure the children's safety at some point, further disrupting the children's lives from their otherwise loving mother. Limitations on pet quantities and cleanliness standards are written into the divorce settlement agreement. BTW, wife has been in therapy for a couple years in the midst of the hoarding. I guess you could say the therapist was either not savvy to the situation or enabling to an irresponsible level. I'm leaning towards the latter. She became more and more emboldened that I was causing her problems as opposed to looking inward. Her therapist seemed to fuel the delusions as far as I could tell. Anyway, thanks for all your advice and getting me to wake up to the madness I contributed to through inaction. Update 1. My soon-to-be ex-wife has a bit of an animal obsession but otherwise is a loving and attentive mother. We share 50-50 custody of 4 children. When we split up last year, I had worked really hard to get the house cleaned up, helped to rehome dozens of animals and eradicate a mice infestation before moving out. Since then, she has collected dozens of animals again and the home reeks of animal urine. My oldest child has reported that the mice have returned. There is so much animal feed around the property and inside the home that wild mice have endless food supplies. The dogs are not potty trained and every caged animal cannot be cleaned regularly enough to keep the odors at bay. When I got the kids for the week, all their belongings, clothing had the strongest pungent odor of dirt and urine. My home is clean and smells fresh and the kids' belongings made my whole house stink. 2 of my kids are wearing the same clothes day and night for multiple days at a time. I called CPS based on my attorney's advice and I feel awful about it. It feels and looks vindictive even though that is not my intent. I feel like garbage and like I'm betraying my kids' mom's trust. I want to co-parent amicably and I feel like this will take away from that. At the same time, she has a problem that is interfering with raising our children in a safe and sanitary environment. Also, my kids love having all the animals. Granted, they love them but they don't recognize the amount of time and cost to properly care for them. They just like the excitement of having a bunch of pets/animals. This is going to also strain my relationship with the kids to a degree. They don't realize that 1. The animals cannot possibly be cared for adequately. 2. That they are going to school stinking to high heaven. 3. That the home is a health concern for them. 4. They see me as the mean dad that wants to take away all their precious animals which are a part of the family. Part of me is just scared of the my STBXW. Like actually afraid for my safety lol. I don't know if she knows yet and part of me wants to go over to her house and help her again clean up and tell her again to rehome the animals. I know this is not realistic as it was the primary source of our arguing in our home when we were together. I told her before moving out that I would always expect that her home be sanitary and not overrun by pets again, but that I would be amicable and fair in our divorce process. Now it just feels like I'm being petty in the process of a difficult divorce even though logically it's not true, but I can't help shake a yucky feeling about calling CPS. Update 2. However, my oldest child's visit from the agent was separate as he goes to middle school. He spilled all the beans and complained heavily about the unsanitary conditions in great detail. I did not tell him, warn him or coach him in any way whatsoever. In fact, I try to not even complain about the home to them as there is nothing they can do about it and it therefore would not be helpful. It would only cause them stress. He detailed that he asked his mom to buy a new $10 shirt and she told him no, she doesn't have the money. He then told the CPS agent that 2 days later, he saw her come home with tons of new chickens and animal supplies. Ouch. I'm saddened that he has been living in those conditions. I feel bad that their mom was probably humiliated by that story being retold to her. My son corroborated every complaint. The only reason I know what he told the agent was that their mom called him tonight and was quizzing him on his interview. I overheard everything he said as I was cleaning the kitchen and he was right there boldly telling his mom all the things he told the agent. I didn't even know he was interviewed today as we had a full afternoon of driving to kids' activities and making dinner, rushing to do all the parenting things. Anyway, I am relieved that there was corroboration and it sounds like this may light a fire under their mom to again make some changes. I feel like this could end up being a regular cycle in the years to come. I hope she hangs in there, finds the courage to recognize there is a legitimate issue and work to get better. I haven't been reached out to by CPS yet, but I suspect to get a call soon and I hope they are able to convince her that changes have to be made. Update 3. I thought the worst thing I'd have to do this spring was keep buying more lemon-scented detergent and hope it could bully the smell out of my kids' clothes when they came over. Then the school called me at 10:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, which is a strange time to be terrified, but the counselor's voice was tight and soft and I knew before she got to the point that something was off. My middle daughter had taken a baby chick to school in her backpack because it was cold at home and mom said it needed someone to hold it. The chick was alive, breathing in the bottom of the front pocket wrapped in one of those fleece pajama leggings cut like a sock. My daughter had decided it couldn't stay in the class after it pooped in her pencil bag and chirped through multiplication. The counselor said they moved it into a dry plastic bin and gave it a piece of paper towel and my kid cried in the bathroom because she thought she had killed it by zipping it up too tight in the hallway. A teacher had asthma and said the smell on the backpack and the dust made her chest tight. The school nurse weighed in. The nurse is the type who has lived through everything 10 times before. She told me the chick needed heat and the backpack needed to never enter the building again. It's hard to argue with a nurse holding a yellow bird in a cafeteria salad bin under her cardigan, trying to keep it warm with body heat. That afternoon there were 2 voicemails, one from the school district saying they're mandated reporters, that they notified CPS about the incident, which kicked my stomach into my throat because even when I'm the one who made the first call I still feel like I did something wrong. The second from the county animal control department notifying me of a scheduled welfare check on our property because of multiple independent complaints about noise, odor, and loose fowl. I did not know my skin could buzz like an electrical pole but apparently it can because I felt it all the way up my neck. I picked up the kids and sat at a stop sign and didn't drive forward because my son started telling me that 2 of the heat lamps in the sunroom had melted the edges of the plastic tub where the bantams were and that one of the rabbits had chewed a lamp cord in half and the light was sitting black and dead in shavings. The boys had used a cereal bowl to scoop shavings out because the plastic was slumping like a lasagna noodle. He asked me if plastic fumes can kill a chicken if the chicken is already used to a smell. I had to tell him I didn't know. From there everything became a week made out of the same 15 minutes repeating. My oldest told me the animal control officer's first visit smelled like hot pennies and a hamster cage and she wrote down the number of animals and then closed the clip on her board and said she'd be back with a second officer because of the number. They asked to see every animal. Some of the birds were tucked into funny places, like the old china hutch that was my grandmother's, the one I gave her because it was too big for this new house. There were hens in the bottom where the serving platters should go. That detail sat with me while I chopped carrots later and made me feel like a traitor to my grandmother's Sunday dinners. Animal control issued warnings, then citations, and set a recheck for 48 hours. I found out because my son texted me a photo of a white paper folded under the door handle like a car wash coupon. He captioned it as "this bad." The form said dangerous wiring and unsanitary habitat, which sounds sanitized when written out, but when a stranger stands on your porch and says it to your face it sounds like you're raising these kids in a barn with no doors. It gets stranger. 2 days after the first visit, the fire department showed up. Not a blazing fire, thank God, but the neighbor smelled smoke and saw a haze through the old sliding doors and called 911. One heat lamp went down in a pile of hay and burned out a ring the size of a pizza before the metal clamp finally gave up and toppled the bulb face down into wet shavings. Steam is a smell you can hear. They came with boots and flashlights and their own air, and what you don't expect is how fast the house gets crowded. They propped the front door open and a firefighter with a face I would know anywhere now walked through and came back out and took his helmet off and kept his face absolutely, perfectly blank. He asked my kids to step onto the lawn and asked my ex to call me. I got there in 10 minutes because I was already pacing the living room pretending to read emails and waiting for a phone to ring. Standing in the yard was like standing at a parade for a town you don't live in anymore. The roosters objected to the sirens with their whole bodies. The firefighters talked directly and kindly to my ex. They were careful, almost as if they were trying to comb snarls out of hair without pulling too hard. They unplugged every heat lamp and told her if she didn't have thermostats and ceramic emitters and non-flammable bedding they'd tag the outlets and code enforcement would shut it down. When they stepped into the sunroom their boots stuck for a second at each step and came up with threads, a sound that I can hear again as I write this. One firefighter asked for a trash bag and came out with the half-melted plastic tub that had chicks stuck to it like burrs and he kept his eyes down because the chicks were alive, then dead, then alive in his hands and then not. I stood there with my kids and didn't have any words that sounded like parenting. My youngest put his hands over his ears and cried so quietly his chest shook like he was cold. My daughter whispered my name like it was a code. If this reads like a book it's because I'm telling it to you clean and in order. In real life it was mixed in with orthodontist co-pays and signing spelling tests and forgetting to take the recycling out and remembering at midnight holding a phone flashlight, and the hum of the refrigerator and the sort of silence you only get at one house. The noise followed us, though. After the fire department left, animal control came back and this time they brought a truck with crates stacked up like luggage. They had a list and moved room by room. They gave her choices. She cried. She got angry. She accused me of orchestrating this, which would have been impressive given my talent level at making sure I remember snack day. I said nothing except yes when they asked my name and he's allergic to dust to an officer who noticed my son's eyes were pink. They took the roosters first. You hear a crate go from light to not light when a rooster goes in. They took the bantams in the sunroom and the house quieted in a way that made the dog next door bark, Like the entire block expected the noise, and when it didn't come, the silence set off alarms. The citations turned into a court date. The court date turned into a judge with pale eyebrows reading our settlement aloud like he was reading it for the first time, which maybe he was, and then, he asked her how many animals she currently had, and she said a number that I know with certainty was not true. Her voice didn't tremble. Mine did when I said my version. The guardian ad litem the court appointed had already come to my house and poked her head into closets and stood in the kids' rooms and asked where they keep their school shoes and asked the kids what happens if they spill something. She had gone to my ex's house too and did not call me after, which is a silence that says more than a paragraph. She spoke in court about safety and hygiene and compliance and used non-compliant like a physician uses guarded. The judge ordered temporary modifications to custody, unannounced home checks, and limits on species that were so specific I felt like we were writing a field guide. There was a clause about electrical heat sources and caging density that sounded like we were designing a building code for a barn we never built. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like someone had swapped out the air I'd been breathing for something too clean. The kids came to me for 3 weeks straight while she brought the house into compliance. Those 3 weeks lasted 2 years in my body. I created a routine that looked like a sports broadcast. If you imagine a fogged visor and someone repeating the same 10 motions, you've got it. The kids walked in and threw their bags into the laundry room and took showers, and I ran the washer twice with vinegar and then twice with regular detergent and hung the backpacks in the garage with bowls of baking soda sunk in their pockets like they were sleeping with oxygen tanks. I wiped down devices and hairbrushes. My daughter needed new glasses because the frame she had smelled like the sunroom. It lives in plastic. I learned that you can get the smell out of anything except foam. Foam is a sponge that never forgets. Their hair held onto it anyway if I rushed them, and I found myself washing my little boy's hair twice and then apologizing because I could see his scalp getting pink. They didn't complain because this is not an adventure for them, it's just a thing that happens after school now, like piano practice. They adapted faster than I did, which should make me feel proud and makes me feel something else I don't have a name for. For the first time in months, I went to her house when she asked. She didn't ask like someone asking for help, she asked like someone dared to call her bluff, but I went. I brought gloves and masks and contractor bags and a 12-pack of those enzyme cleaners that promise to eat pee. I parked at the curb because I couldn't get up the driveway with the crates angled like a mountain. She met me at the door with a smile that was a fence. We lasted 20 minutes before she said I was doing it wrong. I was dragging a bag across the kitchen and the bottom tore, and it wasn't a metaphor, but it was. You cannot empty a life with a 12-pack of enzyme cleaner, so I put the rolls of bags next to the door and left. She texted me that night that I'd abandoned her. Sometimes there is not a right sentence to text back. I looked at the gallon of enzyme and thought about putting it on my tongue to see if it cleaned guilt. I didn't. I went to bed because the kids needed a ride at 6:30 a.m. for choir. The school counselor called again, but this time to tell me something small and good. One of the teachers caught my son washing up in the bathroom before class and told him she noticed he smelled like shampoo, and he lit up like it mattered, and it did. My daughter brought me a crumpled sheet of paper that was a certificate for most improved organization for her locker. I bought her a lockable bin for her room, and she keeps her favorite things in it like it's a vault. These are not heroics, but they work better than talking. There were odd moments of grace with my ex. At a parent-teacher conference, she didn't look at me, but she listened when the math teacher said our son does better when he can sit by the window because the light helps him. We sat in those tiny chairs built for first graders with our knees up, and she folded her hands, which she never does, and I noticed that there weren't feathers stuck to her sweater and her hair smelled like normal shampoo. Afterwards, we stood in the parking lot with a line of minivans idling. She said the therapist suggested a different clinician who specializes in hoarding, and I nodded like maybe she said she was going to try a new recipe and might burn it. We both laughed when a rooster crowed from a phone ringtone in someone else's pocket. We were briefly on the same team, a team called That's Ridiculous. Animal Control did their rechecks. She complied enough to get through. The citations became fines. The fines became a binder on her front hall table with receipts tucked into sheet protectors. When the guardian ad litem came again, she wore the same earrings and asked the kids how many animals they saw last time and how many they saw this time and wrote the numbers. My kids counted like it was a game show. My daughter missed 2 and my son corrected her, and I watched them like I was seeing a different life play out under this one. There were glitches. A snake escaped in her house and a neighbor found it on the front step, narrow and confused, and they put it in a salad spinner until someone could come get it. That neighbor is now my friend. People reveal themselves in odd ways and the salvageable people stay. My ex texted me a photo of a 6-pack of plastic storage drawers and said look. It was the first time in months that her exclamation points weren't daggers. The drawers were full of food for the animals she was keeping, labeled. It felt like a first try drawing of a house a child makes. The proportions were off, but it was clearly a house, the triangle roof on top of the square, a door that you can't open but you know it's a door. There was a hearing 2 weeks ago to revisit custody. The judge said something about clear pattern of relapse and structured compliance plan and set our summer schedule in a way that keeps the children primarily with me while offering her opportunities to take them for weekends that are contingent on a clean check the day before. I drove home with the radio off. My oldest sat in the passenger seat and held the hand pulls on the ceiling and didn't say anything for 5 miles and then asked me if it's okay to love somebody and also know they are not safe for you sometimes. I think this is what growing up is when it arrives too early. I told him yes, which is true, and then told him it's also okay to say no. We pulled into the driveway and the motion sensor light blinked on and the house looked like a ship in a dark harbor. It was just a stucco rectangle with a mailbox that leans, but I had gone soft from quiet. When the kids come over now, the house swallows them. They eat constantly for an hour like people who have been in a waiting room too long. My little boy carries the broom like a staff and tells me he wants to sweep because he likes the lines it makes. They leave clumps of their other life behind, tiny clues, a red feather in the cuff of a sleeve, a smear of pine dust in the seam of a shoe, and we vacuum them up and do not make a ritual out of it. This weekend we planted herbs in a rectangular planter, the kind with a little reservoir so even if you forget to water, the mint will refuse to die. There is dirt on the porch, which is now my favorite kind of mess. I don't know what the next update will be. I know I'm not going to pretend we are fine if we are not. I know I will put my kids in clean beds with sheets that smell like boring detergent, and I will keep answering the phone when schools and caseworkers and sometimes my ex call, and I will keep showing up in court with a tie that does not quite match my shirt. I know I will continue to feel two opposite ways about the same person, and it will be okay because the most important job I have right now is to hold a steady line. The animals will come and go like weather across her house, maybe calmer this season, maybe not, and I will keep 2 towels by the back door and all the supplies I didn't think a person would ever inventory in their head. Sometimes I think about the chick in the backpack and how the nurse tucked it inside her cardigan in a human attempt at a heat lamp. There are people like that everywhere if you look, people who wrap their normal around a crisis to keep it alive long enough to hand it to someone who can take it home. I am trying to be that person for my kids. It's not dramatic. It's just showing up with clean towels and a steady voice and saying yes when asked if this is the right house. It is. For them, it is. Update 4, 2 weeks into the summer schedule and the house decides to do its own version of a surprise party. It starts at 1:38 a.m. with the kind of ring that turns your spine into a tuning fork. My ex on the line, voice high and flat at the same time, telling me there's a bat in the girls' room, and my youngest woke up because it hit the ceiling fan and turned into a piece of paper whipping around, then it disappeared. She says she can't find it now and asks if I know how to trap a bat, like I might keep a butterfly net in my trunk for emergencies. She keeps talking and every third word is breath. I sit up and the edge of the mattress makes a hard line under my legs and I go from asleep to standing with my shoes in the wrong hands. I don't know anything about bats except that the public health website has an entire page about them and how if you wake up with one in the room you have to act like it whispered to you in your sleep. I Google and confirm what my panic already knows, and by 2:07 a.m. we are in an emergency department that has those plastic chairs that leave crosshatch marks on the backs of your thighs. My kids look blown open and then weirdly calm because hospital lighting does that, it irons everything flat. There's a nurse with a soft Chicago accent and a tech with tattooed vines that wrap his wrists, and they say the words post-exposure prophylaxis like they're saying it for the first time tonight and the 50th time this year. My daughter squeezes my hand and says, "Bats eat mosquitoes," like she's trying to give the bat a resume. If you've never watched a kid hold still for fear and for a needle in the same breath, you learn there is a kind of bravery that doesn't want witnesses. The nurse makes balloon animals out of gloves. My son asks if he will turn into Batman if the shots don't work, and his sister tells him that's not how science goes, and I genuinely don't know if she's being kind or cruel because they're both trying to touch something normal. My ex stands to the side, mascara in gray commas under her eyes, and says she's sorry to the air a lot. The doctor asks about animals in the home like he's asking about siblings. I hear my ex say the number of pets out loud and I watch the doctor manage his face into a damp cloth and set it carefully where it won't drip. He orders the whole series for the 2 kids who were asleep in that room and contacts public health himself, which is a relief because sometimes it's nice when somebody else dials the terrifying number. Public health calls me the next day and I talk to a woman who sounds like a librarian with a badge. She asks about screens on windows and food storage and whether there are accumulations that could harbor rodents. She says the word accumulations like it's something you might be proud of if it were shells. She schedules a home assessment for my ex's address and tells me it's routine and that bats are habitat opportunists, which is a nice way of saying they like open doors and clutter they can draft behind. I write it down because I want to remember how she said it so calmly. The house does not enjoy surprise visits from calm people. Animal control tags along again, and code enforcement has a man whose belt carries a tape measure and authority. They tour the house. The bat has evaporated. If you told me bats can slip into another dimension through old insulation like you'd pull a coin through a curtain, I believe you. What they do find is guano in the attic that wasn't there 6 months ago, or maybe we didn't look up then. The insulation looks like someone sprinkled burnt coffee grounds on oatmeal. There are flies that seem almost bored. The code guy steps back down the ladder and peels a long piece of tape off his own pant leg, and I can see he's trying not to look at his boot soles. They post a notice with blocks of orange that make it look like a garage sale sign if you squint, and if you don't, it reads unfit for habitation until such time as. There's a list. Remediate guano. Engage licensed pest control. Remove unsanitary material. Provide proof of compliance. It's like writing a to-do list on a chalkboard and then backing up until it becomes a dinosaur's footprint and standing your whole life inside it. They're polite. They are so precise with their politeness that it makes the air granular. My ex says she's being targeted. The man with the tape measure tells her that bacteria do not hold grudges and the bat isn't on anyone's side. This means the kids come to me indefinitely. Indefinite is a word that looks like it could be folded up and put in a shirt pocket and maybe lost in the wash. It isn't. It sits on the table next to my keys and my kids' library books, and we feed it breakfast. The kids arrive with duffels and a plastic tote that used to hold holiday decorations. In the rush out of the house, nobody grabs shoes that fit my youngest, and he boots around my kitchen in flip-flops that belong to his brother and curls his toes like it will help. I assemble beds, which in my house means tightening the Allen wrench on the bunks and straightening sheets until they slap like flags. I become a laundress and an archivist. Everything gets washed twice and then once more out of superstition. Between cycles, the washing machine makes that hollow rocket sound and the garage feels like a lung. The public health inspector returns my call and tells me that the rabies series has a schedule and we stick to it like religion. The kids are braver about the second and third shots than anyone should have to be. My son names the nurse who remembers him and reports what color her hair tie was like it's part of a ritual. My daughter asks if vaccines make you smarter and the nurse says yes, actually, and winks, and I am grateful for people who are allowed to lie lightly to children when it helps them stand still. The day after the orange paper is posted, there is another incident because this is that kind of summer. The upstairs bathroom at my ex's fails in a way that is not dramatic at first. A small line under the sink cracks, and once a secret becomes a leak, it becomes a fall. Water moves through subfloor like it's been invited, and then one afternoon the ceiling in the living room sighs and lets go. The guys from the mitigation company show up in matching shirts and lay down runners and set up fans that are so loud they feel personal. When they pull down the sagging drywall, the cavity rains mouse nests and the kind of dust that has a color. There are sunflower seeds in places sunflower seeds should never have been. One of the men shakes his head in that way people do when they're thinking about their own houses, and he says quietly to no one, "There's history in here." Insurance gets involved. Insurance cares about numbers and angles, and the word neglect is a glove they put on carefully with 2 fingers so they can say it, without smudging anything. I am not part of those calls. I hear it later in my ex's texts, which come sharp and then soft. She writes that the adjuster took photos and acted like an archaeologist and that they'll cover the ceiling but not the rest. She writes, "I'm trying," the way someone writes to a person they think doesn't believe them. I don't reply right away because every sentence I want to send sounds like a verdict. When I do reply, I send, "How are the kids feeling after the shots?" Because that's a door we can both step through without setting off the alarm. We have court again sooner than we expected because health departments write the kind of letters judges read all the way to the bottom. The guardian ad litem sits at the end of the table with her stack of papers and that tiny notebook she never looks down at, like she's memorized everything and the notebook is for show. The judge does not like bats inside houses. Nobody likes bats inside houses, but judges can turn dislike into paragraphs with seals on them. He modifies the order again. Supervised visits in neutral sites only, for now. Clean checks in advance are no longer a gate to weekends but a prerequisite to even an hour at the library. It sounds punitive but isn't. It sounds like someone drew a very small square in the dirt and said, "Step here. Don't step outside it." Let's start with that. My ex looks like she's trying to stand inside a shape drawn with chalk while someone breathes on the back of her neck. I look at the floor and memorize the pattern in the carpet because if I look at her I will see the part of her that is 26 and wild and kind, and that's not useful in a courtroom. The kids are not projects, they are people, and they are also children, so they build forts out of couch cushions even when you are scheduling shot number 3. They eat popsicles standing over the porch and dripping red fruit like they're bleeding cheerfully out their wrists. My little boy makes a chart of the bat shots receipt stickers and slaps them on the fridge like we're training for something. My daughter refuses to sleep with the ceiling fan on for a while because in her mind the blades create a bat blender, and I don't argue with logic that saved nobody and everybody in the same summer. There is a moment of small, absurd grace. The HOA holds its annual meeting in a clubhouse that smells like lemons and chlorine, and someone I don't know stands up during the open comment period and begins to read from the CC and Rs about farm animals and nuisance odors. He keeps clearing his throat like he swallowed a moth. A neighbor at the back, the one who once texted me a photo of a stray snake coiled in a salad spinner, murmurs bless his heart to nobody in particular. I sit there as calm as a spoon and say nothing. The board president says something measured about ongoing code involvement and cooperation, and then someone brings up pool keys and we all move on like we are talking about the weather. I go home and put the pool key on a hook in the laundry room and it clicks against the wall like punctuation. My ex starts an intensive program with a clinician whose letters after his name mean exactly one thing to me. He knows how to set a table for people who keep trying to eat standing up. Harm reduction, she says on the phone, like it's a new country she's moved to and is trying the language. I drop the kids at a supervised visit at the county family center that looks like an insurance office with toys. The room is painted yellow and there are puzzles missing one piece, a design flaw that makes the metaphor too easy. She sits on the floor with them and reads a book about a dog that behaves. She smiles. She smells like peppermint gum, not like anything else, and the peppermint makes her seem younger. I sit in a plastic chair in the hallway and listen to the murmur through the door and think that sometimes a person being willing to be watched is the bravest thing they can do. The bat incident has an odd echo. A week later, my daughter wakes up at my house at 3:11 a.m. and stands next to my bed like a piece of furniture. She says she heard flapping. She didn't. It's the way new grooves in your brain grab old tires. I turn on every light in the hallway and show her the fans are still, the windows closed, the screens tight. I clap in corners like a cartoon and we both laugh and it feels like getting a splinter out. We watch a squirrel launch itself between trees outside and she says, "That's just a squirrel." Ordinary night creatures are a relief. We keep appointments like they're beads we thread onto a string. Rabies boosters, the pediatrician for the rash that turned out to be nothing, the meeting with the school to talk about a fall schedule that doesn't assume chaos, the individual therapist who looks like she probably grows tomatoes. I email teachers about the smell thing in the past tense and use words like improved and proactive and apologize less than I did last semester. I learned that if you put 2 dryer sheets in sneakers overnight they smell like nothing in the morning and that there's an enzyme spray that makes the car not tell on us. There is a funeral for a bird in the middle of it because life doesn't pause for anything, not bats, not judges, not fans. One of the cockatiels my ex managed to keep, the one with the yellow crest that always looked like it was surprised to be in this story, dies quietly in the night and the supervised visit monitor calls me and asks if the kids can come 15 minutes early to say goodbye. We make a little rectangle in the side yard of the family center with a spade I keep in the trunk because you never know what you'll have to plant. The kids choose a stone and a leaf and my son says a sentence that starts as a joke and turns into a prayer by the time it hits the air. My ex stands there with her arms crossed like she is holding herself in and says thank you to nobody in particular. We're 4 people and a woman with a clipboard arranged around a 3-inch deep fact. On the way out my daughter asks if we can get sunflowers to put there next week and I say yes even though it is not our yard. The monitor nods at me like she's seen stranger things grow in worse places. The house across town is quieter when I drive past it now. The orange paper is gone, replaced by a white one with dates and a phone number. The sliding door is closed. There are fewer crates in the yard and the ones that remain are stacked like someone thought about gravity before walking away. A company van with a raccoon and a logo sits in the driveway one morning and a man in a white suit carries a ladder around back. I don't stop. I keep driving. I go home and spin tomatoes in the salad spinner and watch them throw off water like tiny red centrifuges. My oldest has started running in the evenings. He laces shoes tight and says it makes him feel like he lives somewhere that stays in one place when he moves. He comes back red-cheeked and drinks water from the tap and tells me about how the pavement buckles near the stop sign and how he pretends it's a finish line. My middle daughter carries a spray bottle and wipes down her own desk without prompting now like it's a magic trick only she knows the words to. My little boy is learning to ride a bike and he's at that phase where steering is theoretical and he yells that he's not doing it right while doing it right. We eat dinner at the table most nights. The dog lies in the doorway knowing he's allowed to be a dog and not an alarm. The herb planter throws mint over the side like hair. I leave the back door open for air and we watch moths ping once against the screen and give up because sometimes even they know better. I don't know what it looks like from the outside. From in here, it looks like a stack of forms and the smell of vinegar and a different kind of quiet. It looks like my ex texting a photo of a completely cleared countertop and me texting back a thumbs up and something like nice, as if I am commenting on a sunset when what I'm actually doing is holding my breath. It looks like a plastic card from the county that says she completed a set of classes and a letter from the therapist with words like insight and incremental and compliance that feel like planting sticks in the ground and waiting to see if they are actually cuttings. There is no moral. There is the sound of the dishwasher at 9:52 p.m. and my daughter asking if bats can get into dishwashers and me saying no because some lies are gentle bridges you build so the real answer doesn't swallow a child whole. There is me checking the window screens with my palm and measuring the slack in them like a tailor. There is the way the house smells like clean laundry and sautéed garlic and once like wet dog because it rained while we were at the grocery store and we forgot. The back window's down. There is a calendar with blocks in it that the kids color in, a key on a hook, a garden box of basil that refuses to die. When they ask me what's next I tell them the next thing is bedtime, and in the morning we will fold towels and drive to the clinic and pick up the last shots and then maybe ice cream if we feel like it. And that is true. Sometimes the next thing is not a catastrophe, sometimes it is mint sprigs in a jar on the counter, cold water in a glass, and the knowledge that we will unlock the door and lock it again and sleep in a room where everything with wings stays on the other side of the screen.